Yo, 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 yo. We're back again. Almost like I have a problem or something. Let's talk some sports in a second. Twitter. It's always Twitter. It always is. It really is. It really is always Twitter doing the same thing. Anyway, I had something like set up to post immediately. By the way, cutting down the time for social media almost instantaneously because I preset all of the links. Oh, which, I think I messed something up. We're going to find out here in a second. But I was working on something that got posted. Hold on. Ashton J. There we go. What you guys know how it goes. Once we get the social media stuff out of the way, then we can get down to business. Get down to what happens when I click this link? Fuck. It goes to the wrong podcast. We're gonna fix that. We're gonna fix that real quick. Like, if you're tuning in right now on Twitch, shout out to you. We the last 6 streams, or the last 3 streams, we've gotten 8 subscribers on Twitch. So, miniature wins turn into big things. Big things for all of us. Yeah. Let's see. Got the creator dashboard pulled up. Creator dashboard pulled up here. Check out the stream. Sorry if you've already been writing in the comments or whatever, but oh man, stream manager. Why am I taking so long to click on that? Anyway, we got shit to do, guys. We got a lot of shit to do here. It's a safe way to say it. A censored way to say it. Somehow somebody watched my week 1 breakdown without me posting it at all, or me tweeting about it. As you know, the thing that I suck at the most is social media. Literally just taking the time to post it is what I suck at the most. Let me fix something real quick and then we can get it started. If you're in the comments, feel free to drop your hot takes on anything NFL related or anything really just life related. I'm not a smart person, so I'm perfect to talk about things that are very important in life. Let's see. We're going to fix something real quick. We need to fix one thing and one thing only, and then we'll be perfect. Control V. Delete this link and put the new one in there. That's how it works. That's how we get the viewers. Anyway. I'm doing my top 5 NFL games coming up here in a little bit. So if you got some, if you got like a top 3 or like the number 1 game you're looking forward to watching, drop it in the comments and tell me why. Educate me, because I got reasons for every game that I'm watching. So just wanted to share it with y'all. Damn, I should have posted the link. See, as soon as I went live, I clicked post to everything, even though it was not a click post to everything situation. I was supposed to take the link. I was supposed to take the link. I was supposed to take the link from the current YouTube stream when it goes live and put it as in the link that I posted, but that didn't happen. Anyway, we're gonna go fix one of these. We're gonna fix one of these there tweets. You know what I mean, partner? Is it racist for me to imitate a Texas man, as a man from Texas? Is it racist? Only time will tell. It's not. Don't be afraid to get on top. If he dies, he dies. Good life policy, life motto. But yeah, man, we kind of cooking here, Hold on. Sorry. Let's get this popping. Let's see. Oh, we need to fix the Facebook one. And then we're done. Yeah. I still post on Facebook. Shut up. I've actually gotten better at posting on Instagram. Consistently. Because Instagram, what is it? For my social media stuff, it goes Twitter. I have like over 4,000 followers there. And I have over 1,000 followers on Instagram. And I try and keep them engaged with like all my sports content and like posting funny photos and stuff like that. Because as you guys know, I'm a big fan of posting photos. I had a phase during 2020 during the pandemic where I was posting all of the hot chicks that I normally just look at in secret, aka just like on my normal feed and like their photos and keep scrolling. But I started posting them in my Instagram story. I got some interesting responses. You know, it's always, you learn a lot about people in your life when you post photos of beautiful women who work out and live their best life. And you know, you get some responses you weren't expecting from other ladies, you know what I mean, in your life. So yeah. Fuck. What we're doing? We're fixing the link in our profile. There we go. If you're in Houston, come to Candlelight Park tomorrow at noon and we can fight. I'm just kidding. No, come to play Quidditch. It'll be fun. I'm trying to clear these shits out. You know, I wish Quidditch was fun for me. Hasn't been fun for a while. I know that's sad, but it's true. People try to make this thing as difficult as possible, but I'm trying to keep having fun with my friends for as long as I can, because there's going to come a time where I can't do it anymore. I keep saying that about every sport that I play. And it's just true. At some point, I'm never going to be able to play sports again. And I hope that day is long from now. Every time I see like 60-year-olds hooping it up playing basketball, even if they're like taking little choppy steps left and right, it inspires me personally. How many frames have we skipped? We only skipped 3. We only missed 3 here. Here we go. What we got going on Slack before I get started? We're good. We're good. Closing Discord. I do have like a Broke Boy Discord set up, but I haven't done anything with it. By the way, I guess I'll announce it when it's official. I have 2 ideas that I want to start doing consistently on my YouTube channel. One of them is YouTube stories, where I just tell stories of weird things that happen when I'm Ubering, because that's what I do to like generate money and stuff. Plus some other stuff. But yeah, like I want to start doing that, and like not obviously like not putting names in or anything like that, but telling the stories of people, because some people are interested. Like last night, I picked up these 3 guys from a club in Washington. They were in town, I guess, to go and see this guy's sister's house in Killeen. And, you know, I was telling them that Killeen's not that far. Started talking. They were, like, asking about strip clubs and stuff like that. I'm not the guy to ask about that. I've only been to one strip club one time, and it was Heartbreakers in League City, Texas. So, one of the 3 guys had been in Houston for, like, a year for work. The other 2 were, like, HVAC technicians in Florida. So, you know, they were people of the earth. They were not, like, you know, they weren't dweebs or anything like that. Start talking to a couple of the guys, and we get on this topic of, I don't even know how we got to this point. That's the problem. Like, I got to start memorizing, like, the things that led into these conversations. But one of the guys basically went on this, he started talking about how while I'm wasting time, I'm going to finish the story up and then we'll get the show started. And anyway, he was talking to me about his life and about how he had, how he was an HVAC technician, and I was talking about like, oh man, you're making a good amount of money kind of deal. He's like, yeah, I make like $30 an hour, which is after taxes not very much. It's just enough to live decently in Florida. And I was like, damn, it's a certain group of people that talk like Florida is the fucking shit. And if $30 an hour means that you can only live decent, maybe something's going horribly awry. Anyway, that's coming from a guy who hosts a podcast called the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, by the way. Don't forget that part. Anyway, we're talking. He starts talking about like smoking weed and stuff like that. And I was like, oh man, like I've never, and this is like the God's honest truth. Nobody ever believes me when I tell them this. I've just never had any interest in smoking weed. It seems like a lot of other people have a great time smoking weed, which is so dope that you guys have found something that you truly enjoy. I'm very happy for you. It's just not for me. It's never been something that's even piqued my interest. And this is like, I'm a guy who I started smoking cigars when I was like 23, bro. Like, things that interest me, I go for, right? Even if they're frowned upon. And my cigar smoking is very much frowned upon by a flurry of people in my life. But nothing wrong with that when it's all said and done. Everybody's got their own opinion. Everybody's got their own perspective on, like, how life should be lived and everything like that. But I will point out, I was talking to this guy. He was talking about, how much weed he smokes and stuff like that. He does dabs. And I was like, man, that's, like, crazy intense because it's, like, highly concentrated THC. That would be the equivalent of, like, a person who drinks alcohol consistently drinking Everclear to a certain degree, right? Except without, like, the damaging ramifications of Everclear, right? Like, weed's not as deadly or as dangerous to the human body as alcohol is by, like, not even a long shot. We all know that. And that's coming from a dude who doesn't smoke weed. But yeah, he's talking about that. And then he reveals to me, he's like, yeah, man, like, I finally got back on my feet and all this kind of stuff like that. And I was like, oh, what is this guy talking about? And he was telling me about how he is like a recovering cocaine and heroin addict. Like, legitimately, he's like, yeah, I went to jail for 2 years, and when I was in jail, it helped get me clean. I've been in the 12-step program and all this kind of stuff like that, and gone to tons of meetings and had it, like, spiral his life out of control. He told me about how he's lost, like, almost every single person that he's loved in his life to fentanyl overdoses. He got hooked on heroin because he was trying to prove to his girl, or his fiance at the time, that you can do heroin and stop, kind of deal, and he wasn't able to. I know the logic behind that sounds kind of wild, but if you care about somebody, you want them to stop doing something, I guess you'll try anything. And that fiance, he told me, has since passed away. So it was wild because the look and the smile on this guy's face and the laughter and all the joy on his face, I would have never suspected that he had gone through so many tragedies in such a short time of living. He was 31 years old, making him 1 year older than me, and he had already lost so many important people. He told me about how his mom was a crackhead and how he struggled with drug abuse for a really long time. And he's like, yeah, like, I rarely drink. I basically just smoke weed. Like, I smoke... he's like, I basically just smoke weed, and then we got into a conversation about how, like, weed is in a different category of what people consider, like, people putting cocaine and heroin and Molly and ecstasy and weed all in the same category is outlandish because they're not even in the same type of thing that exists. They're all deemed stage 1 narcotics and all that kind of stuff like that, but that's not what they are in the real world. I thought that was... and it was like, he asked me actually a very important question as the conversation went on. He was like, hey, man, so he's like, I started doing drugs because things got real tough for me, like, with life and everything. He's like, what do you do as a person who's, like, relatively sober? What do you do when things get tough for you? And then I realized, and I sat back, and I had to be honest with him, and I was like, bro, like, I don't think my life has ever been anywhere close to the kind of tough that you're talking about, right? Like, my life has never been to the point where I feel like drugs is my only escape for me to be able to survive to see the next day. And I was just like, he asked me, did I know both of my parents? I was like, my parents are divorced, but I know both of my, like, I have a key to my dad's house and I can show up. My dad gave me my first car, essentially. And I've grown up surrounded and well-loved by my family my entire life, right? And that's despite the parts of my family that I don't necessarily agree with and how they perceive the world, right? That it was like one of those moments where I was like, dude, like, I don't think I've ever had... He's like, he's like, you've never been, like, seriously, like, depressed or anything like that, like, in a state where you felt like you just couldn't get out of it? And I was like, well, yeah, I have, but my mom and a lot of other people in my life have also taught me, like, ways to think about things in the grand scheme, like how, and I can say this, like, some of the few things, some of the positive things that, like, media and movies have always taught me is that, like, one, it can always be worse. Two, it gets better. Like, it's a stupid mentality, but it does. It gets better, and when I believe that it does. Like, bad things happen for, like, a short amount of time, just like good things happen for a short amount of time for a lot of people. And that helps me personally push forward. That helps me never get too low. And I understand that that's because I don't think I qualify, like, I don't think I fall on the scale of, like, neurodivergent in the sense that my brain deviates from the way that vast majority of the planet works, right? And I say that and I see how different human beings are from person to person. It's wild. But yeah, it was a good conversation, and it helped me. It was like one of those moments where I sat back as I was driving these three dudes at like 1 o'clock in the morning to a strip club and think about, man, my life is pretty good for a dude who hosts a show called the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. And, I'm in a position where I'm able to chase my dream on a regular basis. But yeah, I wanted to start chronicling my YouTube stories and the conversations that I have with people, and what, like, the wild stories that I hear from people, or like how wild people act in the car, which once again directly correlated to what time of day it is. So most people I talk to during the daytime are really cool. Like, I've driven a French ambassador before, or I'm not French ambassador, but a member of the French embassy. I've driven him and had a conversation about environmentalism before, which is really cool. But I'm gonna start thinking about, like, kind of after the rides are over, writing down like a couple of notes here and there, and thinking about, some of them resonate really well in my mind because they're really cool, and some of them don't, but are still really wild. Like, people constantly who do like small things that are super annoying in a car, that if you were in a car with them in any other situation, it would be really shitty. Like, there are people who get into my car and get on the speakerphone of their phone and talk to me. And not talk to me, but like talk to somebody on the speakerphone the entirety of the ride. And I'm like, okay, cool. So you're having your conversation, but now, like, I can't listen to anything that I possibly had going on the radio because you want to talk on the speakerphone when you're and I'm assuming, this is based off the assumption that the phone is fully functional and that you can talk onto your phone. But it happens too often for it to be like, oh, my phone's regular microphone and speaker do not work, therefore I have to use my speakerphone. It is one of those things where it's like, man, this is just literally, you want to do this and you don't care who it affects or why it affects them or makes it inconvenient for them in any way, shape, or form. So I thought that was kind of wild. Human beings are kind of like minute assholes on a regular basis. Like, people, because I was like, outside of this one thing that you're doing, you're probably a really nice person. Anyway, it's probably time to start talking about sports so I can get out of here as soon as possible so I don't get the death stare when I go to my girlfriend's house super late. Also, there's supposed to be some meeting that I'm supposed to be at that hasn't started yet, but can't do much about it. Whatever. For some reason, we're skipping frames today. Hopefully, we're all good when this is all said and done. I do have both of the streams picked up for both accounts, so for YouTube and Twitch to monitor. But that shouldn't be enough to completely deviate from everything. Control V. And let me get this description from... Here we go. Sorry. Let's see. Setting up the podcast real quick. And then and we can move on with our lives. What else are we talking about? Oh, by the way, shout out H-Town. Adam Schefter released a graphic where it was like the hometowns and the high schools of the most people who are in the NFL for kickoff on starting rosters, and Houston was tied with Miami, Florida, with 19 players. Which, by the way, if they use the technical definition of Houston, Texas, then 19 is very impressive. But if they use like the greater Houston area, it would be probably closer to 30 or 40. It would double it, I'm sure. And one of my friends, I dropped it in the group chat because every week there's a guy in our group chat that likes charts, and I find football charts on a regular basis because I follow nerd shit about football. And I was like, here's your chart for the week, bro. And he was just like, oh, cool. This is, and somebody noticed that Austin, Texas was like tied for 4th or something. And they were like, who from Austin plays in the NFL? And I was like, half the quarterbacks in the NFL? That's like a thing. It's a weird thing, but it's definitely a thing. Anyway, we got WNBA. We're doing hashtags for this AMA. That works on Twitch. I found out on Twitch that like my number one hashtag that people find me in is AMA, which is interesting. Anyway, let's take it from the top. I'm very hungry, so this podcast is about to cruise through, baby. Don't worry. Haven't eaten in 7 hours. No. Haven't eaten in 10 hours. Yeah. That's more accurate. All right, let's do this. Going live in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, my name's Ashton Gene Lewis, and this is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, episode 197. And if you're really in on the joke, you know that we well surpassed 200 episodes a long time ago. But I'm terrible at numbering things in sequential order, in particular just this podcast in general. And so we are at episode 197, and that's the lie that we're all going to stick to. Episode 200 coming up. If you have any idea what I should do for episode 200, hit me up on Twitter, on Facebook. Well, not on Facebook. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up on Instagram. On Twitter, you can find me at TheAshtonJ. You can also find me at FB_Playbook. You can find me on Instagram at TheAshtonForever, which is also the name of my TikTok account. So check that out. You can also check out, what else? The show. You find the show on every single platform that produces podcasts. So that's Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Podchaser, all that jazz. Podcast distributor. Everywhere under the sun that produces podcasts, this show's on it, whether they want us to be or not. Anyway, let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot to get through here, and I'm going to power through it. So, spent a lot of time writing down a bunch of things to say, and we're going to power through it. We're going to power through it because we're all professionals here. We're really here to set it up and knock them down real quick. So let's get into it. We have, breaking it down, we do have nerd news. We have maybe 2 hydration breaks. We have one for sure for the first time in a long time on the show. We have streaks and peaks and ditches, and if you know, on the Friday show, it becomes the top 5 for the NFL. So we are going to be talking about the top 5 NFL games to watch this week after we do nerd news. And after nerd news, we're doing best of the best. Then our first hydration break will pop up. We got to hydrate ourselves up. I'll be drinking water tonight because I'm not going to drink alcohol until I get to my girlfriend's house. I'm going on like 2 weeks without drinking alcohol, and it's fully accidental, by the way. Then we come back from the hydration break. We do worst to the worst, as always. About a week ago, we talking money, and we talking money. I do not have a media suggestion for you this week. We'll have another hydration break if I feel like taking one, and then it'll be the big hurt, and we'll do what's popping, where we talk about everything going on in the NFL and the WNBA finals, which is just going to be being like, fuck the Connecticut Sun, the Las Vegas Aces are going to be WNBA champions on Sunday. It's going to be sick. It's going to be sick, guys. Can't wait. Anyway, let's take it from the top. Nerd news. The artist formerly known as Nerd News, now known as Geek News, because nerds is like intelligence and things like that, and geeks have proven time and time again that they are a lot of things, and there are some things that they are not. Some, not most, are not smart. So let's talk about Secret Invasion. If you have no idea what this is, don't worry, your boy has you covered. Samuel L. Jackson taking center stage again, just like we all really want him to be at all. Pretty much any given time that he's involved with anything. Marvel is doing a spy thriller of a TV show on Disney Plus called Secret Invasion, based off of the comic book run of the same thing. It leads into Secret Wars, which also involves a lot of Nick Fury, which is going to be dope. Samuel L. Jackson is like 70-something years old and still out here kicking it. Still looks the same, by the way. Has gotten cooler with age. Not many of us can say that. His Instagram is also really funny because he somehow gets the wildest t-shirts on the face of the planet and just posts himself in those t-shirts. So, Secret Invasion, Marvel spy thriller kind of deal that they're doing that involves the bigger story that's going to happen in Secret Wars. this series is gonna be massively important because it is one of the shows that has a lot of the versatility that exists within the comic book world, where it can vary from absolutely serious situations to really goofy stuff at the same time. So you're gonna get a dose of Nick Fury, one of the most powerful human beings that exists within the MCU, and a lot of his power stems from knowledge and information, which is kind of the moral of the story about like what Nick Fury as a character is all about, right? He knows everything. He knows everything and everyone in every situation, and he has a contingency plan for every single thing that can possibly happen. And Secret Invasion is that he's been up in space for a really long period of time dealing with some mystical thing that, if you're a comic book fan, it's Sword, the space version of S.H.I.E.L.D. Anyway, they're going to probably dive into that a little bit more, which is going to be a lot of fun because that's going to continue to lean into the theme of all the movies that have been popping off, where like very few of them are taking place on Earth the entirety of the film or at all in certain situations, and they're drifting closer and closer to looking up into the stars, into the skies. Also, a lot of magic. Magic is going to be a big deal. It has been a big deal for Stage 4, but that perspective that Nick Fury's bringing is a combination of being a powerful person amongst people who have superpowers, being smarter than very smart people, being more tactical in a lot of other things, and also like being able to derive loyalty from certain groups of people that exist within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is how you start a group like the Avengers, right? The Avengers are essentially broken up, and doesn't look like they're gonna get back together. Everybody that's a character that is going to be on the new roster, very few of them even know of each other's existence, right? Like a lot of them know about the original Avengers and that they've developed powers. For instance, Miss Marvel, which if you have not seen that show, just for the cinematic art I would love to know who did all of the end title sequences. If you're a fan of FIFA, it gives the same vibe of FIFA's like loading screens that go on where they have like artscapes that are bright and vibrant and beautiful up against like concrete buildings and stuff all over the world. But Miss Marvel is a really good story that's been told. It does have some sketchy VFX type situation going on, but nonetheless the story and the moral behind it is very important. And going back to the Uber thing, if you are listening on the podcast before the show gets started on YouTube and on Twitch, while I'm doing social media posts and correcting things in social media posts, I talk into the microphone, so it's not just me sitting here silent. And one of the things I talked about is my desire to do a YouTube series. And last night I was Ubering a man who originally is from Pakistan, moved to America in 1981, went to school at St. Louis, the Blue Devils, the other Blue Devils in college basketball, if you're a basketball guy. But he moved to St. Louis. And moving to St. Louis, in the process of it, he becomes a physician, becomes a doctor, which is amazing. And he's from Pakistan. And I told him, I was like, oh man, that's really cool. Like, where are you from? And he was like, I was like, are you from Karachi? And he was like, oh, wow, you know Karachi? And I was like, well, yeah, it's like one of the biggest cities on the face of the planet. And then I also talked about, I was like, it's also a big part of a storyline in Miss Marvel, right? And I explained to him about how Miss Marvel dives into partition. And he was shocked and amazed by it because it got him into this whole perspective of how he thinks America is getting better despite all the things that are kind of going on around us. He believes that America is getting better in terms of how people interact with each other and accept each other for their differences and recognize that certain things need to be left in the past for us to be able to move forward. Dope story. Anyway, but the series of shows that are very, very important to this time period where you're coming post-Endgame, which was a massive event, obviously, right? The ramifications of that, the heroes that continue to not be superheroes anymore. Like you talk about what happened to Thor after Endgame, everybody who watched Tony die after using the Infinity Stones. Oh, sorry for spoiler alerts there. But the effects that watching their friend die had on them and how it has changed the course for a lot of the different heroes and what they're doing, not necessarily being like superhero stuff like saving people from being mugged in the street, and is more like for Thor, who's a god, is going around and trying to find his purpose and figure out what it truly means for him to continue to be Odin's son, right? Or like continue to go on to the path to become Odin's son. And he has all the different dynamics in Thor Love and Thunder about the different, his 2 different hammers that he has to deal with. And everybody struggling with trying to find who they are, which is really funny because it's these older Avengers, older beings that have existed within the Marvel Cinematic Universe for like 10 years on camera who are going through the same struggles as the new guys. The new guys are coming in and they're trying to figure out who they are because that's a part of their story and what is going to be the motivation behind them, because not all of us have Uncle Ben as he's dying, or Aunt May as she's dying, tell us that with great power comes great responsibility, and that becomes the ethos of everything that we do, embodying everything that we do as a hero, right? Not all of us are lucky enough to have that. Some of us have to watch our parents die in an alleyway because some dude wanted her pearl necklace. And it totally doesn't affect our overall mental health as a human being. Anyway, this series is going to do the important work of dampening down the expectation that every single thing involving Marvel is going to be some gigantic, like, the world is at stake situation, right? This is going to be something that leads into a bigger problem, which Secret Invasion is essentially built upon, our Secret Wars is basically built upon the failures of Secret Invasion. And I wonder how much of it is going to be involved, how much of that is going to be involved with the whole situation, because there's things that seemingly are going to come to light for Samuel L. Jackson's character as Nick Fury, because Nick Fury is a person that is very powerful but cannot be trusted at the same time, right? Like, he manipulates people. It's very clear. He sends people, like you saw it in Captain America Civil War, he sends people on what seems to be the same mission, but they have 2 different objectives, and it creates dissension and deceit amongst entire teams of people that he operates with, like Black Widow and Captain America going onto the same ship with SHIELD agents for 2 different reasons, right? That's a real thing. I'm pumped for this show because Samuel L. Jackson is an amazing actor, and Secret Invasion has a lot of very important aspects that are going to come down to the skill and level of acting of it has to be a high quality acting performance, and sometimes it's been hit or miss in certain situations. It's going to be super dope because it's also not going to be like a superhero discovering his powers type situation. This is a totally different walk, a totally different vibe, because Nick Fury doesn't get powers, right? And there's not going to be like the, oh man, I fell into like some toxic sludge, or I woke up one day, I got a mystical bangle, and now I can like move matter. I gained magical powers after my hands got destroyed in a car wreck. It's like, I'm a person, they pulled the Glock out, I got to pull mine out and shoot back, right? Like, that's becoming a thing, and it's very important. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I move on to the next thing. That's what I got for Geek News. Secret Invasion being announced, and there's actually like trailer footage that's super dramatic about what this show is going to be centered around. And I'm pumped. I really am. I'm pumped to check it out, and I can't wait. So we move on to the next thing. As you know, this show bills itself as the best and the worst that sports has to offer on a regular basis. Actually, before we do that, we need to talk about something. Let me talk about something real quick. So, we're going to talk about the top 5 games for week 2 in the NFL. I was about to do best of the best. If you know that intro, you're very familiar with it. But we're going to do top 5 and then best of the best. So, top 5 games for week 2 of the NFL season. Let's take it from the bottom, not from the top. Number 5, Arizona Cardinals at Las Vegas Raiders. This game is massively important. One, both of these teams are 0-1. This is not a divisional game. This is AFC West versus NFC West. 2 of the most difficult divisions in professional football, to be honest with you, and it's kind of wild that the Cardinals are going through this gauntlet to start the season off with, and it could skew how people perceive whether or not that they're very good or not, as they really, like, we're going to talk about the big hurt. The big hurt segment is back, where we just talk about all the injuries in the NFL, and the Cardinals have a bunch of people who are hurt that just so happen to play wide receiver. And if you paid attention to the Cardinals, their wide receiver position has been vastly important to them. They lost Christian Kirk in free agency. They have lost DeAndre Hopkins to suspension. AJ Green is 1 year older, and they're still trying to find dudes to like fill the roles. Like Rondale Moore's not going to play this weekend. That's going to be huge. Luckily for them, they still got Zach Ertz on their side. If you were a person that has Zach Ertz, you might be getting ready to pop off. Anyway, number five for me for this weekend. Arizona Cardinals at Las Vegas Raiders. One, because this could send the Cardinals fan base off the rails and turn this season ugly very early on. The Raiders, on the other hand, I'm very interested to see whether or not Derek Carr's accuracy improves from what we saw versus the Chargers, who, based off of Thursday Night Football and what they did versus the Raiders in Week 1, they might have one of the nastiest defenses in the game, because Asante Samuels was one hair away from back-to-back weeks with an interception after having what people were calling like a really rough rookie season, and I find that pretty impressive. Anyway, I'm wondering, the Raiders hung well with the Chargers, and the Chargers hung well with the Kansas City Chiefs, who eventually won off of a comeback, right? So it makes me wonder, are the Raiders the Raiders might be the team that's like a legit threat in this division to possibly go for a second seed. We'll find out, man, because they play the Chargers again, and then of course they have to play the Chiefs, a team that they are highly invested in being able to beat. But the Raiders may be the nastier out of these two teams overall, and that means the Cardinals season is very much in flux media-wise, because we talked about in our NFL preview about how early on nobody's going to believe in the Cardinals until the second half of the season, right? And now the first half of the season, they've gotten off to a really rough start with a really embarrassing loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. And it could get worse, because if the Raiders look and play like they did last week, they could go out here and embarrass the Cardinals. Number 4 on my list, the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. So, Packers are coming off a really bad loss to the Minnesota Vikings, where their offense is basically non-existent. Nothing's changing with the wide receiver position, and it's been 7 days. So you have to wonder, what's going to give, right? Are the wide receivers going to rise up to the level that the Packers need to be successful, or are the Bears going to come out here and grind out a win like they did versus the 49ers? And yes, I fully understand that the 49ers have a lot of factors that differentiate them from the Packers, but nonetheless, this is the Bears defense with an opportunity to go out here against a team that historically they have lost against. But for the first time in a long time, the Bears are starting off with a key win, a tough, gritty win to grind it out in the rain versus the San Francisco 49ers, one of the better defenses in the NFL. And of course, the Packers, like Aaron Rodgers says, he owns them. He owns them, according to him. So only time will tell if that becomes true here on Sunday, because I cannot think of anything that would get Chicago turned the fuck up early on in this season. 2-0, you could literally win those two. You can win this week and not win a single game for the rest of the season, and people might call it a success. Straight up. With the way the Bears have been playing the last couple of years, the way they started is giving a ton of hope, because a lot of people came out and admitted, they were like, yeah, that game was a grinded out type of game. The weather played a huge factor in it, but that historically is a game that the Bears don't win, because they don't have the consistency across the board to be able to overcome things like a first half interception. Packers Bears, can't wait to see that one. Hopefully it's not a tsunami going on in Green Bay at the same time. Number 3, the Seattle Seahawks at the San Francisco 49ers. 1, this is a divisional matchup, so it's massive. And 2, one team is 1-0, and this is Seattle Seahawks. The 49ers could get off to an 0-2 start, but this is going to be a legit chance for Trey Lance to be able to throw the football down the field. So a lot of people, once again, the pressure builds up to a fever pitch again to watch Trey Lance to go out there and play some quarterback. Because last week you can very easily just be like, there was a monsoon going on. How can you really expect a quarterback to be able to go out there and be able to throw the ball successfully? Totally reasonable. The Seattle Seahawks versus the Denver Broncos, who, once again, after 1 week, we do not know if any team in the NFL is good except the Kansas City Chiefs, right? That is the only thing that we know for sure, that the Kansas City Chiefs, they are cooking. They are on point. They are doing their thing. Seattle, on the other hand, they came out there and they basically didn't blow the game versus the Denver Broncos. Their defense made a couple of really good plays. Their offense was able to move up and down the field pretty successfully, not consistently enough. They kind of faded towards the back half of that game. But this is a huge matchup for both of these teams. The Niners with the opportunity to really go out there and get a key win versus a divisional opponent, and then Trey Lance with an opportunity against the defense that it might be pretty nasty based off what we saw versus the Broncos. Moving on, number 2 on my list. Oh man, I can't wait for this one. It is the Dolphins versus the Ravens. So a couple of things here. The factors. Tua's got to prove that he can do it from game to game, right? Every single game is going to be like, is Tua the reason that we lost it? We know that that's not how it should be. That's how it is, though, because that's how this whole situation works. When you invest all this money in offensive playmakers, when the last 2 years you have been one of the better defenses in the NFL, and the quarterback position, despite all the offensive line problems, which guess what, guys? When we get to the Big Hurt segment, guess what we're going to be talking about in regards to the Dolphins? Offensive line issues. Who would have thought? But they're going up against a really good Baltimore Ravens team that is still very, very hurt, by the way. All 3 of their starting cornerbacks, Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, and, oh man, his name escapes me. That's tough. That's a bad look on my part. But all 3 of their starting corners are currently on the injury report, which doesn't necessarily mean anything that they're both questionable or something like that. But nonetheless, they are both on all 3 of them are on the injury report, and they got to go up against the Miami Dolphins with Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, Tyreek Hill, and try and figure out something. This is going to be a good one because the Ravens played against a Jets team that looks like they're very much cruising their way to a top 3 pick in the NFL draft with Joe Flacco at the helm. They had a lot of pressure that was generated defensively up front, which of course is going to be something that comes as a factor for Tua Tagovailoa, who has and once again, we don't know how bad the offensive line is going into this season. We know Teron Armstead is on the offensive line, but they've also lost Austin Jackson for this week after 14 snaps, by the way. 14 snaps into the season, Austin Jackson with a massive injury to his ankle that there doesn't seem to be like a clear timeline when he's coming back, and now Greg Little is going to be Greg Little is going to be the backup and play this upcoming weekend. The Ravens got a lot on the line. They could go 2-0 in this one. If they lose to the Dolphins like they did last year on Thursday Night Football, in like a really strange, dominating fashion for the Miami Dolphins defense. But this is huge. This is going to be huge for both of these teams, in particular for the Miami Dolphins, who, by the way, they're going to be living and dying by every single game that happens this season, and it sucks because Tua doesn't deserve that. Like, Tua's done nothing wrong, but Tua's done nothing to make the Dolphins bad. The Dolphins were a team that did not invest where they should have to make their team good, and now Tua has to pay the price. And yeah, he's a person of color, so it's always going to be real suspicious to me when, the brown person is persecuted way faster than the other guys who are less talented than him. Anyway, moving on. Number 1 on the list of games to watch for me, it is Monday Night Football, the second part of the doubleheader. The Minnesota Vikings at the Philadelphia Eagles. Both of these teams got the question of, are they for real, put on them after what they had happen in week 1 this season. The Eagles played against the Detroit Lions in one of the more exciting games because the Detroit Lions were, a couple, like 1 or 2 possessions away from coming back and winning that game. They lost by, 38-35 was the final score. So they lost by 3 points. They lost by one possession and gave up a ton of yards to DeAndre Swift in the process of doing that. 181, I believe it was, in total for rushing yards for the Detroit Lions as a team. And DeAndre Swift had vast majority of that versus them. And the evolution of Jordan Davis, who is not being put in pass rush situations, and Derek Barnett being a guy coming back from IR, don't know when he's going to come back. Of course, the constant questions about the linebackers for the Philadelphia Eagles, and then just the overall pressure that is put upon Jalen Hurts to make this team that is immensely talented and has a lot of investment put into it to be able to go out there and win and go out there and be able to win a game. It's Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football, so that should be pretty easy. But nonetheless, the Vikings coming off of a hot win versus the Green Bay Packers with a new head coach has a lot of people thinking that, this might be the guy, because the only thing that's a couple of things have changed. They got a lot of young corners that are stepping up and doing big things for sure. Anthony Booth Jr., who is hurt and maybe out on Sunday, is going to be a huge factor in this one, especially considering Devontae Smith did not get he got 0 catches last week. He was targeted 3 times, didn't come up with a single catch. One of his catches, I remember now. He caught one and then they wiped it away because of pass interference. So yeah, that's my number 1 game for week 2 of the NFL season. So number 5, going through it again, the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. The pressure on the Cardinals to get a win to start off this season, and the Raiders looked pretty good versus the Chargers. Got to see if it's going to carry over to this week. In particular, Derek Carr's accuracy was something that was kind of a little suspect in terms of who he was throwing the ball to, but if you just keep throwing the ball to Devontae Adams, good things are going to happen. And I think Derek Carr's got more based off of the catches and the way that he was playing on Sunday. That's going to be a huge factor. Number 4, the Chicago Bears versus the Green Bay Packers. The Bears coming off of a huge win at home versus the 49ers with an opportunity to go 2-0 for the first time in quite some time with a new head coach, looking like Justin Fields has a real opportunity to go out there and dominate, or go out there and actually get better and play a legit competition. The Packers, one of the better defenses in the NFL, and an opportunity for the Bears to pull off like a major upset. I'm interested to see what happens in this one. Number 3, the Seattle Seahawks with Geno Smith at the helm. Like he said, they wrote him off, but he didn't write back. So we'll see if he writes back this week. You know what I mean? Maybe just got lost in the mail. But yeah, the Seattle Seahawks, and trying to see if anything that they did versus the Broncos is going to carry over and be successful versus the 49ers this upcoming week. Number 2, the Miami Dolphins and the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, just the regular amount of pressure that is on Tua Tagovailoa. They beat the Patriots pretty handily last week, but the fact of the matter is a lot of people expect the Ravens to be a playoff team, especially after seeing what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be capable of this season. A lot of pressure is on the Ravens in general, to especially if they get to the point where they're healthy. J.K. Dobbins is rumored to be possibly healthy for this upcoming weekend, and obviously the flurry of other guys that were on IR that are working their way back. Yeah, big time pressure. And then number 1, the Vikings versus the Eagles. I'm pumped for that one. That's just a lot of talented football players on the football field, and I want to see what happens, especially the defensive line battle, which, by the way, the first 2 weeks of the season, D-line been looking like they have been dominating in almost every game that I've seen. Moving on to the best of the best, ladies and gentlemen. This show bills itself as the best and the worst that sports has to offer on a regular basis. And this one is old, but I do have best of the best. It is the Robert Sarver suspension. So the NBA, after getting a little sketchy during the COVID pandemic, I'm not gonna lie, some of the stuff like Adam Silver talking about how oh man, they definitely should be they felt like Adam Silver had some comments where basically he was like, our guys are like relatively healthy and the COVID restrictions seem like they're really unnecessary. The situation where, there wasn't really like any, never mind. You know what? We're not going to get into that. Anyway, they were a little sketchy during the COVID pandemic because it didn't seem like they were trying to take it as seriously as everybody else wanted them to at the time, especially considering that they were sending like athletes and staff and people all over the country, in particular older guys like Greg Popovich and stuff like that, traveling all over the country and not being serious about COVID protocols seemed like it was a little bit irresponsible. But nonetheless, the NBA is giving out free lessons again on how to handle when people do bad things. Robert Sarver was caught lying in 4K because there was accusations that he not only was massively inappropriate with a lot of his female and male staff in terms of like sexual stuff, but he was also caught multiple times quoting people who used the N-word, who could use the N-word, and he was just like quoting it verbatim on a consistent basis in the office. Also just like creating an unhealthy work environment. You should check out the giant piece that was done on ESPN about all the accusations about like just him being a dick. Like, it literally is just him being a jerk in a workplace and then, of course, crossing the line on multiple different occasions. The NBA thought it was so bad that they took it upon themselves to fine Robert Sarver $10 million and then suspend him from anything that involves the Suns or the Mercury team that he owns, and, of course, like the NBA owns as well, in part because they own the WNBA as a whole, banning him from being able to even set foot in any arena of anything that relates to the NBA and stopping him from being around the team. The team president on Thursday released a statement that had this paragraph in it, and I'm just going to read it verbatim so I make sure I don't misquote anybody in this very serious situation. Similar conduct by any CEO, executive, director, president, teacher, coach, or any other position of leadership would warrant immediate termination. The fact that Robert Sarver, quote-unquote, owns the team does not give him a license to treat others differently than any other leader. The fact that anyone would find him fit to lead because of his ownership position is forgetting that the NBA teams belong to the communities that they serve. Therefore, in accordance with my commitment to helping eradicate any form of racism, sexism, and bias as vice chairman of the Phoenix Suns, I am calling for the resignation of Robert Sarver. That is the president of the Phoenix Suns. That is the president of the Phoenix Suns asking for the league to fire his boss in a public fashion. That's pretty impressive. The other thing that's really impressive is, and the other thing that's going to get his ass pulled out that chair real quick, PayPal is now, by the way, PayPal is the jersey sponsor for the Phoenix Suns, and they have come out publicly today, today's date, I have to remind people, Friday, September 16th, Friday. They have come out and they said they are not going to renew their contract if Robert Sarver is in control and in power with the Phoenix Suns. So, and that's with the Suns and the Mercury, right? All I can say, after seeing how many people have come out and blatantly just been like, you need to get him out of here. Damn, he must have been shitty to everybody. It's one thing, and I'll tell you this much right now. A lot of people who are rich will stick up for other people who are rich if they're a dick to other people about existing, right? That's like a real thing where like other rich people stick up for other rich people and hide behind the guise of like it's a business, it's competition, it's a business, it's competition, it's a business. Like that's a real thing that you hear come out of business people's mouths all the time on a regular basis. That is that's going to be something that weighs heavy on him. That's going to be something that's massive in terms of his ability to maintain his position within the NBA. And it doesn't take away from the fact that just because he's consistently an ass to everyone doesn't mean that he's like not an ass, right? I personally truly enjoy the suffering of rich racist assholes. So while I hesitate to applaud PayPal, especially knowing that there is a massive leverage play in business to be had of coming out making a public statement to get somebody fired in an attempt to possibly drop the price of what it costs to be an advertiser with the Phoenix Suns as a way for the Suns to make it up to PayPal as a company in terms of their connection. It also broadcasts and signals to other teams, like maybe teams in bigger markets, that PayPal is up for bidding, right? Like PayPal is open for business in terms of who can have their logo on their jersey, right? And that could be a massive play pushing Robert Sarver down into the ditch, into the abyss, if you will, in an attempt to leapfrog even higher up the NBA hierarchy, not knowing how successful the Phoenix Suns are going to be for a long period of time, or possibly getting another deal with not only just a bigger team, but also with the Phoenix Suns to go along with that. That I understand that those are legitimate plays that could be happening, but as of now, they've come out, made a public statement about a racist dude, and guess what every reporter on the face of the planet is saying on Twitter, and is probably writing pieces about, probably has written and published pieces about already. Are other financial sponsors going to follow suit? And if you're this other company, you're going to find out a lot about some people, right? We're going to find out a lot about some people because PayPal has come out and done the easiest thing on the face of the planet. Look, they were like, oh, there's a white guy being racist and sexist. We as PayPal stand against that. And we, as PayPal, are willing to not pay somebody a shit ton of money to put our logo on their jersey. A form of advertisement that has not been scientifically proven to be effective on a jersey. Not saying just in general, but like on a jersey is a big thing. Also, we have enough money to go and work with other teams. So it's a layup. It's a layup on many levels, right? To be like, we stand against the white man who says the N-word. We stand against the white man who harasses women. Other rich people don't like that guy, and we don't like him either. Real tough to stand on that side of the fence. But it is, because I haven't heard anything about any other financial sponsors. They sure quick to pull it away from athletes when they do something fucked up. Be interested to see how much people want to make Robert Sarver suffer, especially since, like, let's be for real, Robert Sarver's probably been a dick to people in contract negotiations for businesses multiple times over. And, only time will tell, folks. Only time will tell. That's what we got for best of the best here. We're going to take let me make sure. That's what we're doing. We are indeed taking a hydration break, which is a break for you to consume liquids, whatever that liquid is. We do not judge around here at the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. I am going to, hold on a second, let me make sure I tell you what the name of the song. Let's do Make Your Mark since it's almost 3 minutes. No, hold on. Guys, hold on. I think we do Make Your Mark a lot. Let's do some other ones. Let's do My Journey. All these songs are brought to you by Christina Gukas, who, by the way, now my teammate on my new team, Southwest Alliance Quidditch. Shout out to all my teammates out there holding it down, whatever part of Texas that you're in, or Texas or Oklahoma that you're in. Shout out to you guys. Anyway, this is My Journey by Christina Gukas for our first hydration break of the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. When we come back, we are going to be talking about, you guessed it, the worst of the worst. Damn, that was a quick 3 minutes. Anyway, we're back here live on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. As you can see, I was scrambling there for a second. We have a couple of things to talk about here. So we got Worst of the Worst coming up. We got About a Week Ago. I'm not going to sing the rest of it. We Talking Money or We Talking Money. We do not have a media suggestion this week. Obviously, media suggestion is to watch sports, in particular the WNBA Finals. That is going on at 1 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. it's going on the same time kickoff is for the NFL, like it has the last 2 weeks, which is annoying on a lot of different levels. But guess what? It'll be on my fucking phone if I'm watching at the bar, because your boy does pay for ESPN, so I get it on my app. What else we got? We got the big hurt. Because guess what? When NFL players hurt, we hurt in many different ways, in many different manners, and they also have somewhat of an effect on what's going down. And then we're going to talk about the last. We're going to do predictions for Week 2 of the NFL season. Week 2 of 17 is already upon us, baby. We have to be precious. We have to love the things that could escape us at any given moment. Because guess what? Some of us not going to the playoffs. So 17 weeks is all we really have to enjoy it. Anyway, moving on. Hydration breaks over. Take over the breaks over. Let's talk about the worst thing that I saw in sports this week. So, I don't know if you guys heard this, but Major League Baseball and the MLBPA, the Major League Baseball Players Association, they don't really fuck with each other like that. That's the backdrop of what we're dealing with here, right? So, for the first time ever, minor league baseball players are going to be represented by the Major League Baseball Players Association, meaning that all of the players that are in the minors are now official union members of the Players Association for the first time ever. A couple of things go along with that. Some of them are related to just the game itself, and others are bigger, like loftier ideas, and we're going to talk about 3 things. So, the owners in Major League Baseball, team owners in Major League Baseball, are cut off from like their strongest weapon against Major League big ball players, right? Owners used to leverage younger talent against older talent because access to younger talented baseball players who are on cheaper contracts, who are playing for the big money, who are still striving to move forward, now that they are a part of the MLBPA union, they will be everybody will be negotiating for the same thing. It will not be what is more money for a minor league baseball player is definitely different than what's more money for eventually Aaron Judge's gigantic contract or Carlos Correa's contract for this season, right? What is more money is going to be drastically different. But one of the bigger weapons is the ability to leverage players versus players, right? The ability to leverage essentially the suffering of minor league baseball players who have a different concept of what more money means in comparison to Major League Baseball players, and use that to, one, push out older players who are more expensive, because that's what they like. More players, the longer you last in the league, the more expensive you are going to become. Even in your final years in the MLB, you're going to be more expensive than probably some of the better minor leaguers that are coming up from the minors. That's just how it is, because there's different pay scales for veteran players in the MLB, and there's just not a point where the MLBPA is going to allow somebody to take money that is below market value for where they are in their career. The owner's leverage has been dissipated by the 2 groups of players joining forces, right? There's a couple of other things to go along with this, and this is, I guess, like my personal perspective on like how life should exist in a certain way. But the real life takeaways that go in this, I want to point out how avoidable this situation was. Major League Baseball, who is in charge of the minor league baseball programs, in vast control of almost every single small detail that goes down to it, right? Because they lose money in certain cases with minor league teams. They could have avoided this by simply providing humane, livable wages for minor league baseball players. And now I'm left to believe that nothing but bad things is going to come from this from the owners, which subsequently is going to be them using that vitriol and turning it on the players. The players are going to be put into a situation where, they're going to find a new way to try and pit them against each other in different ways, right? They already have the advantage that the players play for different teams, and that players who want to win championships are willing to do certain things to be able to win. But if Major League Baseball from the jump was paying paying all of their players a livable wage, making sure all of their players had housing that didn't come out of their salary, or paid them enough to be able to afford housing in a lot of different situations, wasn't having them travel in like crazy arduous situations like riding buses for 12, 13, 14, 15 hours on home and road series, feeding them food on a regular basis, right? Not putting minor league baseball players who are the future of Major League Baseball in situations where they have to make tough decisions like they live below the poverty line. All you had to do was treat minor league baseball players like human beings, and you wouldn't be in this situation. And I want to point this out because it's very reminiscent of a lot of things that have happened in human history and why unions exist to begin with, right? When given the option, the wealthy will do the bare minimum. They will do the bare minimum to make sure that their workers survive. And you can make an argument that the billionaire owners of Major League Baseball teams, the billionaire conglomerates, like the group of people who own Major League Baseball teams, have done less than the bare minimum the last couple hundred years. The last 100 years in terms of minor league. They've made minute, small progress forward. And because minor league baseball players were not unionized, they could not collectively agree on a bunch of different things. They didn't have the power of the fact that you need all of us to be able to make this work. Now that they're all together, all on the same page, whether they want to be on the same page or not, I'll point that out. Like, there's definitely some of these guys who are in this union that don't agree with unions. Just like in any other situation that happens in America, where there's a union in one state or in a union in one country, the ramifications and the things that get passed on to people who are not within the union are hilarious, because that's always been a thing. The people who join up with the union force there to be company-wide policy change that benefits all employees, and then the people who don't believe in unions continue to not be in the union, making it keeping its strength at the same level, not making it stronger, even though they benefit from the union stuff, and continue to spew anti-union rhetoric on a regular basis. Now, you can talk about how corruption exists at every single level. I agree, and I totally get that. But the fact of the matter is, the concept of a union, in theory, is on average executed the way it is supposed to, right? Forcing people who have the resources to who have more than enough resources to spend them on the people who give them the ability to have more than enough resources, right? Once again, I'm like this is so baffling, because I don't know how. I'm sure there is a team owner somewhere that is pissed about this union, because like I said before, and I'll say it again, all you had to do was treat them like basic human beings, make their dream possible. Make the salary that they make livable. And you can avoid what's going to happen. Because over the years, I'm telling you right now, from this point on, when the PA gets involved with it, the PA has certain standards in terms of what they are looking for, because they're always trying to maximize the amount of money out of the pie that goes to the players, like they should be. Because at the end of the day, nobody's showing up to watch the old dude up in the box, the old rich dude up in the box. They showing up to watch the Seager brothers. They showing up to watch Verlander. They showing up to watch Carlos Correa. They showing up to watch Rosarena. You know what I mean? Like, these guys who are getting the raw end of the deal, even the dudes who are like the bottom of the lineup, the bottom of the roster for Major League Baseball players, they contribute to the overall product of Major League Baseball, because what it takes to suck in the majors is still the 1% of the 1% in the world at this sport. And that is impossible without the ability to have those guys on the end of the bench, right? Without the ability for them to be able to make a living. There are so many, like, I can guarantee you right now, guys, and this is the dark side of like the world that we live in. There are people who have had ideas that could have changed this world for the better, and they are in a grave right now, because they never had the opportunity to, because their existence and their struggle was too much and overwhelmed them, right? And not even overwhelmed them. Sometimes life is just a force that takes out people, right? There is no like rhyme or reason behind it. There's no like it truly is like, if you don't eat enough food, you're gonna die. And to make the argument that every person that's ever died from starvation, none of them were ever going to contribute anything good to society is bananas. Same thing with any other thing that's ever killed a human being. We have missed out on ideas that could have changed this world for the better. In Major League Baseball, because of how greedy the owners have been over the last 100 years, they have missed out on minor league baseball players that could have become some of the greats in this game, because people couldn't afford to live on the edge for years while they chased the opportunity to get to the next level. Knowing, and we all know this, when it comes to any form of sports, it's to a certain extent, it is about your ability to help the team win. And sometimes it's about who your agent is and who your agent's other clients are. We know that. We know that even at the NFL level. Even practice squad guys will tell you that. They will tell you that you get opportunities on the practice squads of teams that don't even fit the same scheme of player that you are, because your agent knows or represents some of the prominent players or some of the prominent front office people on that team. That's a real thing. But outside of that, some of the greats probably are not, because of the system that we currently existed under for all these years. Some of the greats went on to go become insurance salesmen so that they could provide a nice life for their family. Car salesmen so that they can, eat food on a regular basis. Anyway, just something to think about. I thought Worst of the Worst was pretty dope. I called it Worst of the Worst because the underlying reason for why every union exists is because usually, more often than not, people who are in power and people who are in charge choose not to treat human beings like human beings. And that was pretty much what happened here. Moving on to our next topic for about a week ago. So as you guys know, it's about what happened last week and this week and how vicious the media cycle is. But this is really more of a how vicious life thing is. Last week, Serena Williams, Ultimate Swan Song, U.S. Open, all that kind of stuff like that. Shout out to Roger Federer for not retiring last week and waiting until this week to do it, because he very much could have been like, yeah, bro, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to retire the same week that Serena is, and it could have taken attention away. Although we can do two things at one time, but I think Roger actively made a choice to let Serena do this. Not that Roger Federer would have drawn attention away, but it could have turned in from everybody celebrating Serena for an entire week, and then turned it into celebrating both of them when they could each have their own week where people remember and talk about their greatness as athletes. So last week, Serena's Swan Song. This week, Roger Federer takes a bow. Shout out to one of the greatest of all time. Thank you for all the positive and great memories you gave me. I'm not even much of a tennis fan, man, but I still respect your greatness on a high level. I thought the coolest moment of the retirement obviously was Rafa Nadal's message that he sent to him. He was like, yeah, we started off not really liking each other, and now, I can't wait to see you and your family, bro, at this at the next tournament that we're going to. And he's like, I obviously am not happy that you're done, because it means that I don't get to see you on a regular basis as much. And I think as a guy who plays a sport after high school, I play a low level, I play quad ball. And I had 1 year where 7 of my teammates stopped playing altogether and most of them have not played since. So it's I went to nationals for the first time ever with those teammates, and they never were going to play again. And I sat back and I was just I got to absorb these moments, because you never realize how quickly it goes. Because when we're grinding out, we're at practice, we're playing games, we're working hard, all that kind of stuff like that. And we're over here yeah, man, this is going to last forever. Same thing with every other sport, right? When you're in high school, you think it's going to last forever. You think nothing can stop you, all that kind of jazz like that. And then before you know it, it's time to move on. And it felt like Rafa was kind of talking about that sentiment I think every athlete has ever felt when they've finished playing with or when they finish playing at the same time as their friend or against one of their friends, right? It's like the death of a relationship. Like, they're still friends. They're still going to be cool. They're still going to see each other for holidays. They're still going to have each other's numbers. They're still going to love each other. But they'll never be on the field as competitors trying to beat each other out, because that type of connection is like truly unique to sports in the sense that you can truly have love for somebody in your heart and want to beat the living shit out of them that day. And because you know that they want to do the same thing to you, that makes your bond even tighter. It felt very much like Vegeta Goku-esque, the way Rafa said his goodbye to Federer's playing career, and I always loved that relationship. Truly some of the greatest rivals, because I think that Federer would tell you that Rafa pushed him to a level that he probably couldn't have reached without him. And the same thing with Nadal. It's like same thing with Serena and same thing with Venus and Serena. They needed each other to go to they were already great, but to transcend to the level of legendary status that they're at right now, they needed somebody to really be a person that was a constant threat to them, a person that truly had love for them, and a person that they knew that if they were slacking off was going to take them out, right? But yeah, I love sports, man. I love sports for situations like that. One, to see a great athlete like Serena and truly her impact as a black woman on the world of sports, not just tennis, the world of sports, right? The athletes that she inspired that never are going to play tennis. The people that she inspired that are never going to play sports. Same thing with Roger. Roger was truly dominant on a whole nother level, right? The consistency, the greatness that he exuded, and all the great battles that he's had with Nadal and all the young guys who have come up like Andy Murray and Djokovic and all those guys like that. All the great battles that they've all had together. And his impact on the next generation and her impact on the next generation of players is unfounded. And like I said before, the people who are never going to play the sport, but in their heart have love for them as athletes, don't necessarily know them as people, but the little glimpse that we get into who they are as a person endears us to them. So yeah, shout out to both of them. Obviously, shout out to Serena for changing the game. Shout out to Roger for changing the game too. Moving on to our next topic, We Talking Money or We Talking Money, a segment where we talk about, you guessed it, money. Let's talk big money. Today's price is priceless. I know, it's corny. I love doing priceless because usually it's something really cool. The Tampa Bay Rays made Major League Baseball history. They started an all-Latino lineup on Roberto Clemente Day, which is an opportunity for me to spout off about who Roberto Clemente is as a person who got to meet his son and competed in an art competition to, I think it was like a mural or some shit like that. Anyway, when I was a kid, the MLB All-Star Game was like here in Houston, and they had like some MLB convention, fan convention, and I got entered into a contest or something where you had to like do an art piece, and I was not good like in making art. Like I think I just like wrote something out, like literally wrote letters out and stuff like that. But basically it was like a celebration of Roberto Clemente's legacy, and I learned a lot about Roberto Clemente as an athlete, and more importantly, Roberto Clemente is a person that transcended his sport, right? When he made it, he made sure all his people made it. When he made it to the majors, all his people made it to the majors. And he used to fly back and forth to his hometown and bring food to people who didn't have food. He used to literally fly food from America to his hometown. And his son lives here in Houston, I still think. He's like a lawyer, and I got to meet Ozzie Smith. Yeah, like Ozzie Smith, like the Ozzie Flip, Ozzie Smith. I got to meet him. It was really dope to talk to like truly a legendary baseball player. But he talked about his relationship with Roberto, and it felt like it was massively important because Roberto Clemente is obviously a massive, like there are people who are like 20, who are like my age and younger that wear Roberto Clemente jerseys, Pittsburgh Pirate Roberto Clemente jerseys, because of his impact as a human being. He's truly iconic and sadly passed away because of a plane malfunction that resulted in a plane crash that killed everybody involved. And it was one of those times where I was just like, man, like the impact that he had to inspire people to chase the dream. Because people, whether it be because they like baseball or they saw what baseball could do for them, Roberto Clemente showed how you can still have love for your people. Like it's people back home that are struggling, And he took the money that he had, which in comparison to the money that they make now is not that much, but nonetheless, at the time, it was a lot of money. And he took it and he made sure that people had a decent meal to eat on a regular basis. And to have that kind of love in your heart just for human beings in general is amazing. And the work that he did to help with, getting clean water to different places and stuff like that was massively important. But I thought We Talking Money should be priceless this week because you can't put a price on the impact of a human being like Roberto Clemente and what he obviously has influenced in Major League Baseball, part of the massive wave of Hispanic Latinx-born players who have arrived in Major League Baseball to dominate it. Shout out to him. Shout out to the legend. Shout out to one of the best to ever do it. We do not have a media suggestion, which means it's time for our second hydration break because when we come back, it's the long haul, folks. We got the big hurt. And we're going to break down every single game that's happening in week 2 of the NFL season. And it's going to be real easy this week because I'm one of those people that doesn't take the shit that happened in week 1 and try and immediately translate it apples for oranges to week 2. So we'll talk about that when we get back right here on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. What song we playing? What Christina Gucci song are we going to play? Let's play Laying in Your Arms. Laying in Your Arms. 2 minutes and 48 seconds. I'll be right back. Oh man, what it do, baby? What up? Let's see what goes on. Let's see what happens amongst us, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dial it in. The big hurt is on deck. And as you guys know, the list is long and winding. It's going to slowly scroll. I'm going to break down why each one of these injuries is important and what they have in terms of like significance or like wild things that people said about them while in media availability. So we'll start with the Buccaneers. Donovan Smith, who's their left tackle, his elbow was hurt. If you remember watching the broadcast, he actually was like Borderline like groaning in pain on the sideline. You didn't hear a like he didn't have a mic on or anything like that, but he was very clearly was like struggling to move his arm. The quote about it was, Donovan will be close. It will be hard to make. It will be hard for him to make it, but we'll see. That's Todd Bowles, what he said to reporters about it. So you know. And then he said, rest of the guys we'll see on Sunday, but we know for sure Chris Godwin is out so far. Going to the Ravens, Ronnie Stanley doubtful with an ankle. A tale as old as time. Ronnie Stanley's ankle is fucked up. There's a video going around on Twitter of Ronnie Stanley like throwing blocks to work on his punch and his placement and his slide and everything like that. And he goes up against Daniel Faalele and knocks him down. And there are multiple journalists that think it is real. That think he legitimately ran over Daniel Faalele or like powered him down to the ground, and it was just offensive linemen fucking around doing offensive line things. You can see Daniel like lean back and fall over, and there was multiple journalists who were like reporting it as real, and I thought it was hilarious because there's an angle where like the person is about like 30 feet away, and you can see Daniel like flop. And he still posted it as if it was real. So, there's a thin line. There is a major difference when you're dealing with journalists who have played and who have never played. And I find it hilarious sometimes. J.K. Dobbins also revealed in one of the Ravens. No, it wasn't Ravens. It was a local news broadcast. They got a chance to talk to him, which is interesting because he's still hurt or whatever. But J.K. Dobbins revealed that his hamstring, LCL, and meniscus were also damaged when he tore his ACL. He's questionable for week 2. For the Bills, Dane Jackson, he's massively important. If you don't know who Dane Jackson is, he is the guy who beat out, not Lewis Cine. Lewis Cine plays for the Vikings. He beat out one of like the top draft picks for the Bills this past season to become the nickel corner, which made him the number 2 corner because Tre'Davious White is out. So his knee is hurt. He had a leg sleeve on at practice, which, by the way, leg sleeves in football making a massive comeback. I don't think anybody's really talking about it. Every time I go onto, which by the way, every time I go onto NFL team Snapchat, not the the league's Snapchat, but NFL individual team Snapchats, I actually like doing it because it's like reminiscent of the one season that I played college football. And also I take some of their agility drills and I use them and work out using those. And it helps me a ton because I'm slow and fat. So I need to move around in like very quick manners. So using drills that NFL players use to warm up their muscles and stuff actually helps me a bunch. But it also just looks cool. Leg sleeves are back. And it's not just wide receivers. It's obviously the diva defensive tackle as well. Just want to put that out there. But yeah, he was rocking a leg sleeve at practice. He has a knee injury. He's questionable, which is massive because it's only week 2. But moving on, for the Chicago Bears, Velus Jones Jr., his hamstring's messed up and he's doubtful. A lot of people have gone on to the internet to make jokes about how old Velus Jones Jr. is. If you do not know, Velus Jones went to... somebody wrote in on YouTube, and it's Rafael Pena. Shout out to him for checking out the show. He asked, am I watching the Tampa Bay Rays game? I am not. My dude. I'm not going to lie. If there was one sport that I watched the least of, it is Major League Baseball. Ladies and gentlemen, I hear cool stories and I read cool stories, and I thought it was important because I have like a a pseudo connection to Roberto Clemente. But moving on, Velus Jones Jr. went to Tennessee and he went to USC, and he went long enough to get an undergrad degree and a master's degree, so he was in college for 6 years, which made him the 3rd oldest rookie. I did like a TikTok on him a couple months back during the draft season proportion of the year, and he's like the 3rd oldest rookie that was available to be drafted, and he was the only one out of the top 3 oldest ones that were like a viable draft prospect. And so he was drafted by the Bears. He's a wide receiver and a kick returner, so hopefully he'll be back soon, because when you're a rookie, you're trying to catch your footing quickly so you can establish what you're capable of doing, and the team can figure out where they want to put you in the system. And especially with the Bears, their wide receiver situation, a lot of that stuff's got to be wide open competition-wise, man. You go out there, you have a couple of good games in a row, you get a lot more playing time, you establish yourself as a starter. Bengals This is the one I think everybody was everybody saw. T. Higgins took a massive blow to the head and he was concussed. He's questionable at practice, which means he's probably going to play. He practiced today, but he missed Thursday because he went to his dad's funeral. Fucking brutal, man. Sorry, T. Higgins, and Mr. Higgins as well. So, oh right, T. Higgins, his dad. He has like a stepdad that he calls his dad, I think. Shout out to the legend. Looks like he raised a fine young man, and I know as a parent, that's probably all you can really. That's probably all you ever really want to hope for, that your kid's gonna be all right. So, especially after you're gone. So yeah, but yeah, man, that's tough. That's tough. The Cowboys, Dak Prescott's thumb is broken. If you didn't hear, he has a Bennett fracture. Which, by the way, guess what your boy learned this week? What a Bennett fracture is. It's like the Liz Frank of hand injuries. So it is the base of your thumb, the bone that's at the base of your thumb, like right where the ambidextrous part begins, and it's broken like all the way across. So as you can imagine, that makes holding a football very difficult, and also playing football very difficult. But yeah, that's your health lesson. Shout out to In Street Clothes, which is a podcast that I listen to because I listened to another podcast and they had him on as a guest, which is why you have guests on podcast, right? But yeah, In Street Clothes, they talk about like injuries. They're both like, one's a PT, one's a doctor, or they're both doctors, and one of them specializes in sports medicine. And they typically focus on tracking injuries for NBA players, but they also do NFL. And they did a whole thing about why Dak Prescott got like surgery from this certain person, what his surgery was supposed to look like, and like his recovery and all that kind of stuff. And there's a viable chance that he can come back before the 6 to 8 week timeline, which I don't think he should. He's not going to go on IR because the 8 weeks would be IR. Like if he was put on IR after week 1, he wouldn't be able to come back until week 9 of the season, which would be 8 weeks from week 1. So he would be on IR, but when he's not on IR, he's like able to do other things like in the facility, if I'm not mistaken. Dak had surgery Monday for his Bennett fracture, just in case people were wondering. Michael Gallup slowly on his way back to galloping on the field. He was massive in his contract year with the Dallas Cowboys and got the big deal in towards ACL. So everybody, he's like in the same boat as J.K. Dobbins and a bunch of other players like Elton Jenkins for the Packers, where they tore their ACLs last season and they're essentially week to week. Like they're trying to be extra cautious and be like, you need to prove to me that every single direction of your knee works before we can move on and call you viable to play in an NFL game, which is totally understandable. But Michael Gallup would be a huge boost to an offense that is going to deal with Cooper Rush, which if we've seen anything about Cooper, he's got his moments where he does well, but he's also got his moments where he throws games away. He's done that a couple of times, but we're going to find out. We're going to find out if Michael Gallup can play or not this upcoming week. I don't know why you would want him to play, but hey, Michael Gallup and Dak Prescott should be coming back at the same time, in my opinion. But speaking of other injuries for the Cowboys, Jaron Kearse, who is a safety that feels, he's one of those safeties that plays like the line. He plays box safety, essentially, and does a good job of helping in pass coverage as well. And he is, he's out. He's out for Sunday. So that's bad. That's bad for the Cowboys defense. They're going to need everybody, all hands on deck in week 2. Broncos, KJ Hamler out with a knee injury. He hasn't practiced the last 3 days, so it is definitively out. The Broncos are also going to be without their starting guard, Quentin Mears. So I'm sure that'll be fun for Russell Wilson. Speaking of the Green Bay Packers, who are not shown on the big hurt because they only had like one injury, and it's not even really an injury. Elton Jenkins tore his ACL, and he's on the injury report as questionable with his ACL recovery. He came back after 9 months, and he's been in Packers practice. It's just a question of if he's fully healed, and I'm assuming it's got to deal with his ability to give confidence to the Packers front office, because Elton is a massive part of the Green Bay Packers offensive line. So, that being said, the Texans are going to be without their center. Multiple teams are going to be without their center this week. The Texans are not going to have their center, Justin Britt. He's out for personal reasons. Legitimately tried to find it, couldn't find it. Colts, Shaq Leonard, the artist formerly known as Darius Leonard, is out because of his back surgery. He hasn't recovered from that yet, but he did practice this week. He says he was better than he was last week, which most people would imagine that that's the case. Now we move on to another tale that truly is as old as time. The offensive line for the Miami Dolphins is got injuries across it, which will, of course, affect the quality of it because they're going up against a team that showed really good pass rush in week 1 in the Baltimore Ravens. Austin Jackson is out with an ankle injury. The Dolphins lose their right tackle after 14 snaps. Greg Little is going to be the backup. Yes, Greg Little from Allen, Texas, who used to be Kyler Murray's teammate in high school. He went to Ole Miss, part of the money team. The Ole Miss money team, you know what I mean. Saints, they're going to be without Paulson Adebo, young corner that kind of was kind of flexing a little bit, kind of showed out a little bit. We'll see when he comes back, though. He's out with an ankle injury. Speaking of Saints, Alvin Kamara is a question mark. He has a rib injury, and he hasn't practiced in 2 days. But he's also Alvin Kamara, which means that he could just be resting for 2 days, and then on Sunday they activate him. So we'll see. The Giants have the following players out. 3 of them are DBs, by the way. All 4 of these people are starters. Nick McLeod with a hamstring injury. Aaron Robinson with an appendectomy or appendicitis. I don't know if he's had his appendix removed or not, but he's a corner. Wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson. You may remember him from classic hits such as that side-by-side video of him and Kenny Golladay running through the same drill, where Kenny Golladay, who has signed a big deal with the New York Giants and is not fighting for a roster spot whatsoever, who is also recovering from an injury, is kind of like Blase going through a cutting drill, where Wan'Dale Robinson is running through that drill as if his life depends upon it as a rookie playing for the New York Giants and trying to fight for time on the field. Yeah, that classic. Anyway, he hurt his knee. He's out for this Sunday. Jason Pinnock also out due to a shoulder injury. And then doubtful, even though he's listed as doubtful, I read an article about how he says he's like close to being back. Kayvon Thibodeau, who hurt his knee, we all saw how. And Azeez Ojulari, who I remember during the pre-draft process and hope is doing well playing. He's got a calf injury. Those suck. As out of all the leg injuries I've ever had, a calf injury is probably like the toughest one because it you don't realize how much you use your calf until it's hurt. Just like every other bone and muscle you've ever had. Anyway, moving on. Steelers, TJ Watt, pectoral injury. We saw it on Sunday. He is on short-term IR, which means he can come back in like 6 weeks. The San Francisco 49ers, questionable with a groin injury that kept him out of week 1. George Kittle was back in practice today, so could be a thing. Jamal Adams, on the other hand, he tore his quad, and he's on IR. Speculation that he might miss the entirety of the season from Pete Carroll today. So, fantastic. Back-to-back years with massive time missed for Jamal Adams. I'm sure he's ecstatic about that. The starting guard for the Tennessee Titans, Nate Davis, is questionable with a knee injury. The Raiders have the following players out. All 4 of these players, 3 of them are starters. 1 of them is in a rotation because 1 of them is a running back, but he did score a touchdown versus the Chargers. Andre James, the center for the Raiders, concussion, out for this game. So it must have been a really bad one because they played on Sunday. So, yeah. Denzel Perriman, ankle injury, out. Massive. He played really, really well. By the way, shout out Denzel Perriman. He is on the NFL. Denzel Perriman is on. What is that? It's there's a YouTube account called NFL Play. There it is. And they have drills from NFL players on like how to improve your skills and stuff like that. And Denzel Perriman does the linebacker one, and I did a bunch of his drills, and I actually feel like I got a little bit faster. My brain processes movement in a different way now because of some of the drills that were on there. And they were like really basic ones that you can do like in your backyard. You should definitely check it out. Just type in like NFL Play Denzel Perriman linebacker drills, and it will come up. Also, that whole video is like a quiet flex. So he has the microphone clipped to his he has it clipped to his shirt that he's wearing, his Nike shirt, his icy white Nike shirt that he's wearing, and you can just hear his chain jangling against the microphone the entire time. Like it's like massive, like frozen rope chain banging against it the whole time. Because obviously you work out with your chain on. I wear every single chain even when I'm in the house because I started from the bottom, now I'm here. Anyway, that's all I got for injuries. We're not doing Chiefs and we're not doing Chargers because they already played for Thursday Night Football. In case you were wondering, Justin Herbert injured the rib cartilage, the cartilage in his rib, and that's why he's hurt. Also, shout out Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He tore it up last night. He had me worried there for a little bit. Don't forget to watch the WNBA Finals this upcoming Sunday at 1 or at noon. At noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Anyway, watch the Aces. By the way, when the Aces win the WNBA Finals, your boy will be having that championship shirt on. Your boy is going to be rocking the championship shirt. And I'm getting one for my teammate Jimmy. She is a Seattle Storm fan. I'm going to get her one so she can feel like a winner too. LA Chargers. So we start here. Do the breakdowns of the NFL games. These are going to be kind of quick. These are going to be kind of quick here. And I can actually tell you what I did. Oh, man, I forgot. I'm supposed to be telling you guys about my record for the spread and list. Sorry. Pulling this up. Somebody just threatened me with my niece being ill-behaved. I'm just kidding. Bailey would never do something like that out of fear. I'm kidding. Fingers crossed my niece grows up to be like 6'2". Because her dad's like 6'4" and played tight end at Jackson State. So, sorry. Looking up my record for both of my pick'em leagues for ESPN. If you guys don't know, that's the only place that I use those. That is the only place that I use the picks that I give out on this show. My ESPN Pick'em League. Moving on. A couple things. Trying to get to what's popping. Here we go. This is the last segment of the show. We did the big hurt. Now we're just going to do some quick breakdowns of all the games for week 2 of the NFL season. So for the spread after week 1, we are 10-6, and against the picks, we are 9-6, baby. So last night versus the spread, I picked I took the Chiefs. I took the Chiefs minus 3.5. It was a bad mistake. I lost by half a point, so that was tough. The other thing, and then I picked the Chiefs to win, so I still got that half of it. But no, I'm sorry, I still got those points in only the ESPN app. Anyway, moving on. Drop some picks, talk about breakdowns here. Try and keep this simple because it's week 2 of the NFL season. There's really legitimately the only information that you're gathering, and this is going to be true for like 4 weeks. The only information that you're gathering is like, oh man, this team looks nothing like they did last year, or this team looks exactly like they did last year. There's no like finite actual data to take away from, even though there's been a ton of plays played. There's no things that you can say that a team is consistent at doing yet because the coaches haven't revealed what their coaching tendencies are just yet. Anyway, Chargers versus KC, I just explained it. I took KC and then I took minus 3.5 and lost on that one. Dolphins plus 3.5 versus the Ravens. The Ravens are the favorite in this one. So me personally, I'm going to go for the Dolphins plus 3.5 because I really, honestly, I'm not joking, guys. The Ravens looked so suspect versus the Jets last week. And that score is deceptive, but I went back and I did the numbers because Holly Rowe, who's a local big-time sports lady on Twitter here in Houston. She was like, what team do you think is going to improve from what they look like in week 2? Because they look bad in week 1. And the Ravens were on my list because I was like, man, basically, other than those big plays to score those touchdowns, they did not have any good-looking plays. And one dude was like, well, the Ravens won 24-7, so what are you talking about? And then I was like, well, if you watched the game, you would know that they scored all 3 of their touchdowns off of, like, massive throw. We talked about it on the show when we did the review of Week 1. Every play except one, which was a 17-yard passing play, which is, like, not huge, but it's still pretty big. Everything else was over 20 yards. Like every other big play that they had was over 20 yards, more than a fourth of the field in one single play. Many people would call that pretty impressive. But the fact of the matter is, the Dolphins play better defense, and they're gonna have a better offense than the Jets. So I'm almost tempted to take the Dolphins in the upset, bro. Like I'm not even joking on this one. The only thing that's really holding me back from taking this one is the fact that I saw Tua float a lot of passes up when he got into tough situations, and then 2, the pass rush from the offense, like the pass rush from the Patriots getting to Tua, which may be some divisional rival familiarity that's factoring in there, and we'll see what happens. But You know what, man? I feel it. I'm taking the Dolphins and the 3.5, bro. I'm taking the Dolphins and the 3.5 on this one to get the win. That's like one of my few upset picks going on here because I honestly, they look so suspect versus the Jets. We're going to find out. I'm probably going to look stupid after we talk about this because the Dolphins didn't look exactly fucking good versus the Patriots, let's be for real. But the Patriots are a significantly better opponent than the Jets. The Browns are playing the Jets, and this is one of the bigger lines of the week. The Jets are a dog in this one, plus 6.5, and the Browns are minus 6.5. So the Panthers gritted it out. They grinded out a close game. The Browns came back and won in the back half of the game. I have to imagine that the play call distribution is going to be a little bit different. The Jets defense, I'm very intrigued to see if the Jets defense plays as well as they did versus the Ravens just a week ago. So I'm going to actually, because of my faith that the Browns are not going to turn the ball over a bunch in this one, I'm going to go with the Browns with the points and for them to win straight up. So the Browns to win by a touchdown, I don't feel like it's an outlandish concept for me as a human being. The Commanders taking on the Detroit Lions. This game is interesting. Washington is the dog in this situation, but by minus 1.5. So it's at Detroit, which is the Detroit Lions have been the underdog against the spread 24 straight games, and it's very fitting that the first time that they are a favorite, it's not a true favorite because you get 3 points for being the home team. It's massaged and baked into the spread. The benefit of having the ability to wake up in your own bed and going through your routine without it being interrupted because you are in your facilities and you know where everything is at. You don't have to be in the visitor locker room, which varies in quality depending upon where you are in the league and stuff like that. So that 3 points is a big factor, and they're technically not the dog. And this is a pick'em. Anything under 3 on the spread is a pick'em situation. The Detroit Lions, though, minus 1.5. Impressive showing versus the Eagles in the back half of that game. The Commanders' pressure allowed them to get a comeback win versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not an impressive opponent. I would say the Detroit Lions play better against a really high-quality opponent consistently, and that makes me think that they're going to go out here and smack the shit out the Commanders. I'm not even lying, dude. The Detroit Lions also play better defense despite the fact that one of their key corners is hurt. That's a big factor for me. Detroit Lions to win straight up and to take the 1.5. Minus 1.5 is nothing. So I don't even feel bad about that. So if you think that, like, if you're ever in a situation and it's less than minus 3 or it's a plus 3 situation, you're essentially like, it's a pickup. Whoever you think is going to win the game, you take them in the spread as well. And it helps you out. Trust me. It helped me out. It's helped me clean up some of the easy spread games that I gave away early on, like years ago. Just living by that one rule, even if it burns me, more often than not, it actually benefits me. Colts minus 4.5, Jacksonville Jaguars plus 4.5. So I saw this stat, and I want to point it out, and I'm not saying it's going to factor into what I believe is going to happen, but it's important. The Jaguars have won 5 games in their last 30 games, and 3 of those 5 games have been against the Colts. And it was like the season opener from 3 years ago, their second time that they played the Colts 2 years ago, and the last game of the season that eliminated the Colts from the playoffs last year. The Colts looked really bad versus the Texans because they're just starting out and they're working on getting Matt Ryan mixed in there. And also, let's be for real, the wide receiver talent is not where it needs to be. Like we said before, when he got traded to the Colts, because of how good the drafting has been for the Falcons in the last couple of years, when it comes to wide receiver, the situation with the Colts, this may be the worst wide receiver group he's worked with in the NFL, and that's saying a lot, right? Like, he's had one of the best of our time in Julio Jones. Calvin Ridley's consistently been there. He's had some pretty good tight ends as time has gone on. So that's a factor into it. How much does that affect their ability to play against Jacksonville? That makes me think this is going to be a close game. As a matter of fact, it makes me almost think that Jacksonville is going to be able to win this one. But I know for a fact that I'm taking Jacksonville plus 4.5 because it's a divisional matchup, and both of these teams look like they cruising down the street of being so mid right now. And I have to wonder how many times can they hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor and it works successfully against him. We know that the Jacksonville Jaguars have been slightly better defensively than the Texans the last couple of years. But the Texans had a really good defensive performance versus the Colts and still almost lost that game because of a simple turnover, which makes me think like I should take Jacksonville 4.5 and then take the Colts to win straight up, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take Colts money line. Colts money line. And this is one of those things where you split it up, right? Like you pick money line, you pick spread. Money line, I'll take the Colts up front to win it outright because of their. If they go out here and they don't turn the ball over, they should be able to take out Jacksonville. But it should be a close matchup because of the defensive quality that's happening on both sides of the ball. So I'm taking both. Got both of them lined up. I'm banking on this being a close game, and if it's not, I'm basically screwed on this bet anyway, so it doesn't matter. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not that I'm actually betting. Of course not. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints. If you don't know the storied history between these two teams, basically the Buccaneers, since Tom Brady has gotten there, have never beaten the Saints. Like they have this really weird record going on that they've just not been able to take them out. Like, remember last year when it was like the fewest passes for 5 touchdowns in NFL history, and it was Jameis throwing like completing 11 passes for 5 touchdowns, and it was versus the Buccaneers. Like, weird things like that happen all the time. Remember that one time the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, but before the regular season was over, they got smoked like 50-3 on national television by the Saints of all teams. A Saints team that didn't make the playoffs. The only time the Saints have beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or the only time the Buccaneers have beaten the Saints in the last like 4 years has been in the playoffs for the Buccaneers to go win the playoffs. So, yeah. That plus 2.5 looking nice though. Vegas is very smart on this one because they know the magic of the Superdome. The Mercedes-Benz Superdome. I almost said Caesars. Is it Caesars still? It's Caesars. It's Caesars now. I should know. I've been there like 3 times in the last like 2 years. And been like our Airbnb the last time that we were in New Orleans. For this past summer, we went to New Orleans to play Curse in Major League Quad Ball, and we were right next to the stadium. Like right next, it was crazy. Also, very nice Airbnb, and it was like in that neighborhood that's like right on the line between like the hood and the gentrified part of town. Like the wave of gentrification hadn't hit that part yet, and the night before we left, the people down the street was turning up. They had the Isley Brothers playing, they had the barbecue on the grill, and the weed smoke was in the air. I almost walked down the street. I'm not even going to lie. I know everybody else wasn't going to feel comfortable doing it, but I almost walked down the street because I knew they was going to let me hang out with them. Anyway, Buccaneers minus 2.5. Saints plus 2.5. We saw the Saints already get a divisional win versus the Atlanta Falcons in comeback fashion, right? This situation that they got going on is going to be difficult for me to even pick New Orleans in any way, shape, or form. I think Tampa Bay gets the warm-up game versus the Dallas Cowboys. Great defensive performance throughout the course of the game, even before Dak went out, right? Like they were able to generate pressure. They were able to get just pure turnovers and get pure stops, right? And a lot of that talent, you could argue, is better than what the Saints got going on. But first of all, I'm pumped to see this game. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm taking Tampa Bay minus 2.5 and straight up. So Tampa Bay minus 2.5 and straight up in that game. Carolina Panthers plus 2.5 at the New York Giants. The Giants have been underdogs in 15 straight games, by the way. That streak is broken. They are a favorite versus the Carolina Panthers, who had a game that they had won taken from them by elite quarterback Jacoby Brissett. Tough look. Oh, also the Giants got a massive upset versus the Titans in week 1, which the Titans are going through a phase right now where they're trying to figure out who's going to be their next guy. Like Treylon Burks, I saw some stat where like he led all rookie wide receivers in yards after the catch, and I was like, that's oddly specific. So we're at that point. We're at that point of the process right now, and so they got to figure it out. That's gonna be a tough one here, especially considering I don't feel like very much of what you saw from the Panthers versus the Browns should endear much confidence, other than the fact that the Panthers played a very good game versus a highly talent-rich Browns team, and that's what makes me take them. That's what makes me, because it's plus 2.5. So I mean, whoever I think is going to win the game straight up, I should take. So I'm taking the dogs, dog Panthers, dog cats, cat dog. The Carolina Panthers plus 2.5 on that one. We got a couple. How many more we got? 6. We got 6 more. Taking those. New England. This is a nice system I got here. I have the line and the game sewed up, so I can delete the one that I don't want to take in the app. So I do the exact picks, because I know there was one point last year where I mixed up a couple, and I ended up giving picks on the show that I didn't select in the app, and then the picks I gave on the show were right. So that was tough. New England Patriots minus 1.5 at Pittsburgh Steelers plus 1.5. So the big thing, Mac Jones is probably going to play. He was out with illness the last 2 days or whatever. They did not look great because it seemed like it's almost like Mac Jones had 3 voices in his head at one time, which is a legit possibility at this point. But the Steelers, man, I know why this is plus 1.5. Both of the defenses look pretty good in terms of the Patriots versus the Dolphins. The Steelers, in a game where they generated 6 turnovers, got 21 points. You're not going to win games like that, man. You're not going to win games taking away half of your opponent's possessions and then getting nothing out of them. That's a real thing. That's a real thing, and it makes you wonder, are the Patriots about to come in here and tune up the Steelers? Because, one, it's Mike Tomlin versus Bill Belichick, but it makes you wonder, the talent level across the board, right? Pass rush is going to be a big factor in this one. We know the Bengals pass rush is still good from a year ago, and that affected Mitchell Trubisky because the Steelers have one of the worst offensive lines in the league so far. And they're going to be at home, which I don't really factor that much into every single pick that I make in terms of home field advantage. But the line is plus 1.5. So whoever you think is going to win the game, you got to take them in this one, right? Tight line on this one. I would take the Steelers off the respect of the defense. They scored a touchdown last week, guys. That they're probably not going to get 6 turnovers and a touchdown this upcoming week, but a man can hope. So I'm taking the Steelers plus 1.5 because just off the strength of the defense. Because if you were picking a team and you were their offense is ridiculous and their defense is garbage, you would still feel comfortable picking that team because we live in an offensively driven league, right? We live in that kind of league. But to argue that Mac Jones is going to come out here and light up the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, highly unlikely, my dude. Highly unlikely. This could literally come down to who doesn't turn the ball over. Biggest spread. Second largest spread of the weekend here. And it is, oh man, I lost it there for a second. The Falcons are taking on the Rams, and it's plus 10.5. Look, man, I'm not falling for that shit. I'm taking the 10.5 points, even though I know the Falcons are mad suspect, right? But I'm taking the Rams to win straight up. I don't first of all the Super Bowl hangover is for real, but the talent difference between the Falcons and the Rams is massive. But what we saw in game 1 shows that they're going out there against teams that have more talent than them. For instance, I believed that the Saints have more talent than the Falcons do, but they were able to go out there and work something out. They were able to go out there and work around it. My question starts to become, Cordero Patterson at the running back position, he's not going to be able to run wild like he did in game 1 versus the Saints. We know that. That's not going to happen, but we can bank on them not getting absolutely boat raced in this one. And if we take an L on this one, I'll live, So I'll take the spread on the Atlanta Falcons 10.5, and then I'll take the Rams straight up on money line because once again, they're still having offensive line problems, so getting any, which by the way, almost doesn't happen for the Falcons, getting any form of pass rush, which has been, if there has been one thing that has defined the Falcons the last 10 years, is the lack of pass rush that is outside of Jonathan Abraham and Dwight Freeney. Right? Like, outside of those guys, there hasn't been any prominent pass rusher that has come up to the Falcons and turned them into, a real world beater. A lot of the stuff that they did to get to the Super Bowl centered around their offense being ridiculous and their offense having a ton of balance and their secondary, and that included the linebackers at one point, because Deion Jones, his rookie and second year in the NFL, was insane. So, they don't have him. The Rams are probably going to tear him up, but I'm sure they'll keep it close in the second half. The Seattle Seahawks take on the San Francisco 49ers. They are a touchdown plus favorite versus the 49ers because it is the veteran presence of Geno Smith, which is a real thing. Like, I'm not saying that in an ironic fashion, versus the San Francisco 49ers. And the question, do you believe, and you listener at home, tell me what you think at FB_playbook, do you think that Geno Smith is better than Justin Fields right now as a quarterback? I don't know the answer, because I always lean on the value of experience when it comes to quarterbacking situations. Like, if Geno Smith and Justin Fields were on the same team and Geno Smith wasn't a high-end draft pick, because once again, Geno Smith was a high-end draft pick, but Justin Fields wasn't a high-end draft pick that had to be played due to the amount of investment in him as a football player, would he be able to beat out Geno Smith in a straight-up competition? Like a straight-up QB competition. I would also like to point out the Seahawks showed that they have the ability to get some pass rush going. They also have they also had a pretty nice presence for their run game that helped out a ton. And then combine that with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf apparently still being able to get the ball down the field. That's going to be huge. And it's hard for me to sit here and think that the Seahawks are going to go out here and turn the ball over 4 times and score. And the 49ers defense is going to score multiple touchdowns. I think 7.5 is a lot based off of the offensive style that they executed versus the Denver Broncos. But you know what? We're gonna split it up here. So I'll take the 49ers are the favorite. Is that right? Anyway, I'll take the Seahawks to win and the plus 7.5. That's weird. I'll take that for the upset, quote unquote upset. The Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys the line isn't up, or the line wasn't up when I pulled the lines online. But whatever it is, I take it. The Bengals The Bengals struggled versus probably what is going to end up being a top 3 defense in the NFL this season based off of everything that we know about the Steelers consistently, even without TJ Watt. They were like, remember, Alex Highsmith got 3 sacks in this game, that first game versus the Bengals for the Steelers defense. So they got other people helping. The Bengals take on the Cowboys. Obviously, I'm taking the Bengals, and I'll take whatever points they put up for them. As long as it's not crazy. Is it? Somebody's got a live line on this. Hold on. Let me check it real quick. Bengals versus Cowboys line. It's 7.5. I'm taking the Bengals. Yeah, that seems seems like cash money. That seems very cash money of you, bro. Bengals minus 7.5. I'll take it. Even though the struggles for the Bengals offensive line were very evident and it's very concerning. Houston Texans, a dog versus the Broncos plus 10.5. I guess they didn't see what the Texans did to the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson last season, because obviously those are apples to oranges. Anyway, the Texans are taking on the Denver Broncos. The Broncos defense is just absurd versus the Seattle Seahawks, a team that some people would argue is around the same level as the Texans. The Texans definitely cruising there with a tie currently, 0-1 on the season after having one mistake that they let snowball into a comeback tie from it's not a comeback because they didn't actually come back, but a comeback tie for the Colts, a team that we question is whether they are good based off of what we saw in that game, because they needed 20 points and they scored 17. They needed 20 points, they scored 17. And they couldn't muster anymore. The only thing that was really going for their offense that was consistent was the ability for Jonathan Taylor to run over Texans defenders. Denver Broncos on this one, man. I will take the Broncos to win and the Texans to keep it close, because I don't think they're as bad as a lot of people think they are. I will say I'm banking on a couple of Texans turnovers, at least 2 in this one, at least 2. Not generated, I mean like actual turnovers, because the game versus the Colts, very talented defense. Fact of the matter is that Davis Mills not throwing interceptions is something that hasn't happened consistently enough for you to believe that it is going to not happen consistently. Like, he's more often in his young career in the NFL has thrown interceptions than he has not. Especially with the Broncos pressure. Bradley Chubb is a beast, and the corners for the Broncos are insane. Nico Collins game possibly on deck. Big time Nico Collins game possibly on deck here. We'll see. Cardinals versus Vegas. Line is plus 3.5. It's interesting to me. I liked a lot of what I saw from the Raiders in week 1 in terms of pass pressure generation. But I have to wonder how much of that's going to have an effect on Kyler Murray, who right now leans more towards the running path than the passing path. And with the wide receiver injuries piling up, I think that the Raiders could run away with this one, honestly, man. So I'm going to take them on both the money line and the spread. Based off of what I saw the Raiders were capable of doing, not only defensively, but their offense was pretty consistent. The biggest issue, obviously, was the inaccuracy of Derek Carr. Some of that was due to the fact that the Chargers' pass rush is insane, and guess what? The Cardinals are not that. So the drop-off in pass rush could set Derek Carr up for a big game versus a divisional opponent. Or, I'm sorry, I keep thinking it's a divisional opponent. It is NFC and AFC West. There's a big difference. But they are still 2 very good teams. We'll see. The Bears versus the Packers. The Packers look like they were struggling offensively, and I don't know what could change possibly in the course of 1 week for that not to be the case. The pass rush of the Bears is going to be huge here, because that's what with the Vikings was highly effective. The Vikings pass rush was so vicious towards Aaron Rodgers that they basically disrupted any play that wasn't just a straight up pocket pass. Anything that rolled out to the outside, they had dudes screaming downfield at Aaron Rodgers, and it affected his ability to be able to find people open consistently. And when they did find people open, those opportunities were so few and far between. They were banging on him pretty hard. So, I'm going to take... do I think this game will be close? Man. The 49ers defense is really, really good. The Packers defense is really, really good. Man, you know what? I'm taking the Packers to have the big bounce back week, because the wide receiver and defensive back situation heavily favors what the Packers got going on. So Packers minus 8.5. I'll take that. I know that's dangerous territory based off what we saw last week, but Justin Fields and the situation that they were in is truly unique, and it dampened some of the things that the 49ers can do well. So we'll find out. They'll be playing against a quarterback that we know is competent. We don't know if Trey Lance is or not yet. The Tennessee Titans plus 9.5 versus the Buffalo Bills, a team that they beat last year on Monday Night Football, because the Bills tuned up the Rams pretty badly here, and the Tennessee Titans defense has not yet shown ideas of stepping forward as a defense. They generated a ton of pressure last year, but you have to wonder if that's going to be consistent. They also have pretty young corners, like Caleb Farley is a big question mark as to whether or not he's going to be consistent enough to be able to stop the presence that is Stephon Diggs. But you know what, man? 9.5 is a lot of points for a team that's like semi-competent in the Tennessee Titans. So I'll take the Tennessee Titans plus 9.5 on the spread, and then I'll also take the Buffalo Bills on the money line, because that seems like the most logical thing in my brain right now. The Minnesota Vikings, this is the second part of the doubleheader. This is our last game. I can't wait to see how this one shakes out, because this game is essentially already decided. It is Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football, and he's in the late time slot. So I'll be taking the Eagles
I'll be taking the Eagles on both accounts. The line is only only 2.5. So I'll be taking the Eagles minus 2.5. And ladies and gentlemen, that just off the Kirk Cousins curse. Look it up. Educate yourselves. I'll be taking it just off of that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, in the books, I'm going to call this show officially over. Under 2 hours on the podcast, a little bit over 2 hours on the Twitch and YouTube stream. Shout out to everybody who checked it out. Of course, I'm going to be tweeting this out a bunch, so if you are getting to this point during the podcast, I really appreciate it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at FB_playbook, at the Ashton J. Follow the podcast at Broke Boy Pod. Follow me on Instagram at the Ashton Forever. Follow me on TikTok at the same exact name. Don't you love that? Universal branding across the board, baby. Other than that, find me on Twitter. That's where I spend the most time on social media, projecting out my thoughts. I'll be watching football under my own circumstances on Sunday. Anyway, I'm out of here. Y'all do it. Wash your hands, wash your ass, and love somebody.